Hello, and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne. We all know that life is hard, right? It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it can be wonderful all at the same time. My hope is that we can take a deep dive into self-development topics and explore life's lessons through book clubs, conversations, and interviews. And together, we can uncover the lessons that others have already learned to help us navigate this crazy, wonderful ride called life. Hello and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne, and today with Krys Pappius. In 2003, Krys was living what many would call a good life. She was in her 10th year as a police officer and, as far as everyone could tell, was successful and living the life she wanted to live. The truth, though, was that wasn't the case, and she'll tell us a little bit more about that in a minute. But fortunately, through a series of events and several years of self-discovery, Krys created the life she always wanted to live. And she's now using what she learned during her transformation in her work as a mindset coach. Krys's mission is to help other women who are tired of being people pleasers, feeling stuck and uncertain about their future, and to help those who are ready to take action and create the life they love. Welcome, Krys. I'm so glad you could join me today.
Thanks, Marianne. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. So, like many of our guests, I will say that you had a bit of a windy road getting here. Some major ups and downs, like I think we all have, right?
Yeah.
Life is messy, one of my premises. So I think it will help if you can tell sort of the backstory of where you came from and when you had your big epiphany and kind of that story, if we could kind of lay that out.
Sure. Well, you alluded to a bit already in that in the early 2000s, anyone who would see me would think that I was having a great life. I had a well-paying job. It was steady, owned the house, owned the car, had no debt, traveled, life was good. And I was 10 years into law enforcement. And by that time, I'd had some interesting events happen. I, had been into the burning building to get out grandma that the family had left behind. I had taken a suicidal nail off a bridge railing. Prosecutors told me they liked getting my files because they were complete and, they appreciated that. I had been acknowledged for the efforts that I'd done to get drunk drivers off the road. It all looked good, but it wasn't, because the truth is that on the inside, my soul was slowly dying. I was just losing myself entirely. The truth is that I had absolutely no self-confidence. And I expected at any moment I was going to get busted for being the fraud, right? Because of some traumas in my childhood, early youth, steeped in shame, always worrying about the future, reliving the traumas of the past, looked at myself in the mirror and hated what I saw, but I walked around with that nice little smile on my face all the time. And,
The mask.
The mask.
Yeah.
I was wearing the mask. And it all came to a head in 2003. I was working, got involved in something. I was in a pursuit and I went over a bridge that was, unbeknownst to me, covered in black ice. And I lost control of my car. And it just started fishtailing from one side of the bridge deck to the other, getting, faster with the momentum. I could hear that metal scrunching. Point is that my car was in motion for what appeared like a long time. And it was clear to me that my car might flip off the bridge onto the railway tracks below. And I knew that I might not survive this with the forces that were at play. And it suddenly hit me, all the dreams that I had left up on a shelf, that I had been living a life that was so not in alignment with who I had hoped to be in life. It wasn't what I wanted. I didn't like who I'd become, and I was about to lose it all. And I thought to myself, if I survive this, things are going to change. If I survive this, I'm going to break out of this prison that I felt I was living in, I should say. Life seemed like a dead end, and it just didn't. In that moment, it was like I had connected to that voice that was so deep inside me. It was for the first time I heard Krys, and Krys was saying, enough. We're not living like this again, that we are going to change. The reality is my car finally did go headfirst into a concrete pillar. It did stop moving, and clearly I survived. But I had some significant injuries, and mentally, physically, I was in a very dark place. And it would be 15 months before I could actually go back to work. And I was fit to go back to work and nothing had changed. In fact, I had been out of that environment for 15 months and walking back into it. I just felt myself change again into that person that I didn't want to be. So now was the time to start making good on the promise I'd made myself that this was going to change. Type A personality, got to do it all by myself, right? Can't ask for help because that's a sign of weakness.
I don't know anybody like that.
No, I'm sure none of your audience knows. And so I started searching and, didn't know any better. The books, the workshops, the courses, all of that. And I found them interesting and I found them fluff because they all promised me or gave me permission to dream, but not one of them told me how to make that dream my reality. And it occurred to me why some authors publish 26 self-help books. They never give you the punchline.
Yeah.
So as I took these courses and workshops and read the books, I would get these little nuggets here and there. Something would kind of hit me and I go, oh, that's, when I stood back and I looked at the nuggets, I started seeing how they could all come together, how they told a story. And I started creating this process that I then followed. And it took time. It was step by step. But eventually, after a number of years, because the circuitous road I took, I realized I'm happy. I'm content. I have no stress. Life is simple. I'm excited about life again. And even now, I think, wow, I try to go back to those days that were so dark and lonely. I remember there were days where I'd be working and I drive in my car, I go to the sort of like the farmlands right in the middle of nowhere. I'd make sure my windows were all rolled up. I would turn off all my radios and I would just scream. I would just scream on the top of my voice out of frustration.
It blows my mind still that repeatedly everybody I talked to, not everybody, there was one that was not the case. It takes some major thing, some pivotal thing that finally gets us to connect with our real self or our inner child or whatever fancy word you want to use. But it's that voice. You said you finally heard Krys. I had a similar experience, not quite as dramatic, but still similar. And everybody I talk to, same thing. It's like some major event and we wake up. I keep calling it wake up. It blows my mind. I just have to say it blows my mind because I guess I keep wishing that it could happen earlier for women. Like I just wish that we could either not lose ourselves in the first place or wake up earlier, but I haven't come across that nugget yet on how we could do that.
Well, and I think what you're saying is such gold and it's so true. And it's why I do what I do. It is absolutely true that far too many of us live on autopilot. We just go and we go and we go and we go. You read these stories in the news where someone's life has been turned completely upside down for, reasons that, maybe they had something to do with it, maybe not, but some tragedy happens, some trauma happens, and they lift themselves up and they go on in life to do amazing things. I believe strongly, and this, in 30 years in the criminal justice system, working with people whose lives have been impacted, I have a firm belief that we have, each one of us, a depth of strength and wisdom that we just cannot even begin to imagine. And it's only when our backs are against the wall, where it's sink or swim time, we kind of perceive that we have no choice, that we dig deep, right? We tap into that and we get past whatever the circumstances are. For far too many of us, we then go back, we forget the lessons and we go back. My mission in life, exactly what you said, why wait? You don't have to wait. Mm-hmm. It's there. You don't have to wait until your back is against the wall. And gee, what a nice alternative to be able to do it on your own time.
Yeah.
At your own pace, without the trauma.
Yeah. So a couple of things struck me that today that didn't when we connected the first time. It's interesting to me that you were in this, what many would call very strong role in law enforcement. And you said you had no confidence. You sort of felt like you didn't belong there, right? You had this imposter syndrome, I'll put the label on it, but yet you were walking around doing a great job, from everything I can tell, in that role. So it's just the dichotomy of that situation that really sort of jumps out at me. And the other thing that jumped out at me is you, I think similar to myself, you are, I say I'm a dot connector. Like it's disparate pieces of information and people. In my day job, that's what I do, is I connect a lot of dots. And I think I've heard other people call it a curator, right? But to your point, there's a lot of information out there, and it's a lot of the work we're both doing is to try to bring that information to people. But it's telling the story. It's helping people see how it can be applied, that I think is the challenge for a lot of people. Like it's hard to connect it all. So I think this is a good spot. It sounds like that's the space you're in as well, is kind of helping string those nuggets into a story that people can understand and relate to and then use.
I hear that actually a lot, is that I've never looked at it that way.
Yeah.
I've never seen it that way. We get so singular in our vision, what we see, how we perceive the world. We don't see things that don't support our view of the world, right? So we have this view of the world, and our brain, our brain cannot possibly take in all the information that's coming into me right now, right? My cat's down at the foot, my light is on, I can hear a plane going. Like if we were distracted by all that information, we couldn't function. We wouldn't move. So what does our brain do? Our brain goes, that's in alignment with what I believe. That's in alignment. It all makes sense. We don't see the rest.
Reticular activating system.
Yes.
That's what you call it, right? So it's the filter.
Yes, it's the filter. We need to feel right. We need to feel secure. We need to feel in control. And anything that challenges the way we view the world, we filter out.
Yeah. So
someone like me who has absolutely no sort of emotional investment in your life, for example, and I say that with all the kindness, reasonable. I can look at what you're saying and I can see the patterns. And maybe that is a gift. Maybe that is my secret sauce, that I am able, yes, to connect the dots. And maybe that's the investigator in me.
I think that's part of the gift. Yeah, there is a parallel there. I do think that.
Yeah.
I want to go back to something that you said. So you said something about you put yourself, or the real self, and your dreams, hopes and dreams on a shelf. I might have got that a little bit wrong, but that's the gist of what you said.
Absolutely.
And I think it's worth going back and touching on something that I know I read when I was looking at you the first time. And it's about your dream to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, right?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And so I think I read something about the fact that you had dreamt that for like 25 years, but the realization that it really only took one shift, one mindset change to go from I can't do this, which is what you were thinking for 25 years, to I can do this, then got you to achieving that objective within a year or so, right? I think it's such a great example of something tangible that shows the significance of our thoughts and how they can hinder us or propel us forward.
Yep, you're absolutely right. I had every reason, and it all made sense. It was so reasonable, I'm not someone who travels halfway around the world to climb a mountain. I could never do that. I could never be like, I could never. And one of the things that I thought of, that the dream that came to me in that moment of chaos in this car being out of control, was Kili, that I had wanted to climb that mountain and I was going to do it. And in that moment, I knew I was going to do it. And yes, once I was fit and I could start moving again, I could start walking again, I started getting ready. I looked into it and it became so easy to fly halfway around the world to go up that mountain. And what was even better was I did it on online research. And it just so happened that I found a company that led trips up. And I just thought, wow, I feel good about this. And it was the best company on the mountain, the best equipped, the best organized, like everything fell into place. One mindset
Yeah, isn't that crazy? It's like if you can train yourself, even just as you're starting out or as a person starting out and trying to do some of these shifts or really look at things differently, if you can just train yourself to notice when you're having any of these negative thoughts or these limiting beliefs, and just train yourself, if you can't, even if you can't stop them yet, but train yourself to just say, what's a different perspective? How can I look at it differently? I think that's the shift, right? You start shifting and saying, what if the possibility was there? And it opens up a whole new world.
Mhm.
It's amazing to me that you got that much messaging in that event that happened to you.
Wow, that was quite the event.
Right.
You know, are you familiar with the work of Byron Katie?
I'm not.
Okay, so she has this whole process, and one of the questions she asks is, what is the belief? The belief, I cannot climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And the next question is, can you be absolutely certain that that's true? Well, no, I can't be absolutely certain. Okay, so the door's cracked open a bit.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, very powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Just a simple question.
Yeah. It's learning to ask the right questions at the right times, right? And then believing the answers. That's the hard part.
Well, and to have somebody challenge it, because we are so, at one point, I probably would have said, yes, it is absolutely true
Right.
that I can't
Right.
climb Kili.
It's just not.
not true.
That's a good question to ask yourself. I want to switch over to a core component of the work you do. So you do a lot of focus on helping people shift, or helping mostly women shift from being people pleasers, right?
Mhm.
And what was interesting to me is I was out to dinner last night with some girlfriends from high school. We go out once a month and have dinner. And the conversation that came up, there was something that was said that actually was the same as a couple of points you make on your website. And I'm gonna try to reiterate them. So if you are trying to identify whether or not you're a people pleaser, there was a list of things, and a few of them were, I'm only happy when everyone around me is happy, or my relationships are one-sided. I give, they receive, and it makes me resentful. And I thought it tied right into our conversation last night about how so many mothers and wives, and we do all the things in the house and in the family to try to keep everybody happy, to try to keep it peaceful. And I think, and this goes to the conversation we had last night, we sort of trick ourselves into saying we're doing that for ourselves, right? It's better if it's peaceful. It helps me, all those things. But the reality is, over time, we do get resentful that we're doing that, right?
Mhm.
We do get resentful that we have to always be the one kind of crafting the scenario and making sure all the pieces are in the right place and everybody's kind of just chugging along harmoniously. So I thought, boy, does that resonate with me and with the conversation we just had. And I don't necessarily know if people would think of just those things as you being a people pleaser.
How many times have you heard a woman in particular, say, I just want time for me. I just want me time. If you're not getting me time, then you are stretching yourself for other things, for things that are not me. So if you ask yourself, well, I don't have me time, so I have other time. Where am I spending my time? In one of my trainings, I use this analogy. So there's this brand new airline that's going to hit the world, and it's going to be fantastic. It's going to take you anywhere you want in the world. You want to go, it's going to take you. And it's going to have the cheapest airfares you've ever seen. Nothing like that has ever happened. And they have a really, really cool new business model. They have no maintenance budget. Just going to fly their planes until they crash. Right? That's what we're doing.
Oh, I love this analogy.
Doing.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Who wants to fly that airline?
Nobody's going to sign up for that airline.
And yet we're doing it to ourselves all the time.
Yeah.
This is a machine. This body of ours, it's a machine. The work has to start within. We have to start looking inside for the answers. We can't keep looking outside for what is going to solve my pain, solve my problem. And the first question that needs to be answered, because without this, there is nothing, is what do I want? Not what I should want, not what my friends want, not what the media tells me I want. What do I want? Think of what are the major areas in your life. There's relationships, health, work. So just think of 3 and ask yourself, what do I really want? And let yourself just really, what do I want? And if the word should comes up, it's not the answer. So let's say for work, and this is just, pulling examples out of the air. So at work, I want a promotion. That's going to make me happy. Okay, so I want a promotion. The next question is, why is that important to me? So you write your answer. The next question is, why is that important to me? The initial 3 or 4 answers are all superficial answers that are coming from your head. You don't want those answers. You want to know the answers in your heart. Why is that important to me? And what someone might find when they do this exercise, and you keep asking the question, why is that important? Why is that answer important? Why is that important to me? Until you feel it in your heart. I've heard it said, you keep asking the question until the answer you give gets you to tears. That's what you really want. That is what you really want. And it's not the promotion necessarily. What does that promotion give you? And then I would say, and why is that important? Those are all such superficial, head-based, thought-out answers. You want to get to the ones that are really resonating. Like I said, people say when you get to the real answer, you'll feel the tears. You'll get emotional. That's what you long for.
An exercise like that, I'm thinking, takes multiple attempts, because I'm thinking that you're right about all the head answers coming first. The easy stuff, we can kind of spit out a bunch of stuff, right? If we were just whiteboarding this. But I think that major breakthrough is hard to get to.
Not as hard as you might think. Look, do you have to do the work? Yes. And you're absolutely right. I may do that exercise with, the promotion today, and I would reach one answer. Tomorrow might be another answer. The actual words might be different, but then what is the common denominator? Anything you ask about how you feel or what do you want definitely is going to be impacted about where you are right now in life, in this moment. And it may change tomorrow, but there will be a pattern. Fundamentally, there will be similarities. And probably, actually, if you do this exercise multiple times, different days, different time of day, what have you, it actually may serve you even better because it's giving you more information about yourself. Today, item A might be the thing that really brings you to tears and makes you emotional. And tomorrow it may be item B. What is the pattern? Maybe you need both. You need to keep mining away at it until you find the diamonds.
It's like peeling the onion.
It is, absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, is that part of the process? So you talk about doing a life mapping session with your client, and I assume there's some that comes in there somewhere. There's some part of that includes something like this. Is that accurate or no?
I have changed the way I do work, and I don't know if you're looking at my website right now. The work that I do that I used to do in the life mapping session, I now incorporate into my coaching because I think it's too fundamental to separate them. If we are a good match to work together, and I don't accept anybody as a client until we go through a vetting process, because I want my client to think that I'm the right person for them, and I want the person to be the client I want to work with. If the chemistry is not there, then it's too frustrating for both of us.
I think that's important, Krys. I'm just going to sidebar for a second on that, because you and I talked a tiny bit about this when we connected, and it's come up before on the show as well. And I think in this world that's saturated with coaches right now, and both of us agree that there's a place for them. Obviously, you're doing that work. There's a place for them, and they can really help people to dig into this work and really take their life into a different direction and help transform. But I think it's so important, and you just hit on it, like do your homework like anything else. Make sure you get somebody that's quality, that's aligned with your beliefs, that you're going to get actionable items out of, and not the quote unquote fluff, right? I think I just want to bring that point up because you and I both agree on it. Even though you're a coach, there's something there that needs to be said for people that are listening, because there's so much out there.
I do not believe in instant results. Okay. Yes, I may have changed my mind about Kilimanjaro. Okay, yes, I was able to do that. But when you're starting to talk about serious life transformations, how you perceive the world, Kili was actually just the first step for me, because all that showed me was I can change my mind. The impact on my life of going up Kili, well, it was transformative, but it wasn't life altering. When you're talking about relationships, when you're talking about jobs, those can have significant, if you change in those areas, that can have a significant impact on your life in many ways. I don't believe in just do it. I don't believe in jumping off cliffs. I believe that you take small baby steps towards your goal. Every step that you accomplish is a celebration, regardless of the outcome. You're either getting feedback on this works for you or not, or you're actually celebrating because you have actually achieved something that you know is getting you closer. I don't believe in rainbows and unicorns. Life throws you curveballs. And the truth is that when you start getting to this age, which we're talking about midlife, there's a lot of things that are going to start happening that you're going to think is a challenge. Okay. People are going to start dying. We got to admit it. We are closer now. I'm way closer to the end than I am to the beginning. Relationships come to an end. People actually die. Yes, my friends, they do. And until we start acknowledging that, life is pretty darn hard. So life will always throw you curveballs. The question is, do you feel equipped to be confident that no matter what happens, you're going to land on your feet? So let me give you a little personal example of what it's like for me. A few years ago, in a 5-day period, 5 days, my life was touched by a homicide. My cat was hunted off my balcony by an owl. And I got a phone call from across the country saying my mother was seriously injured in an accident. I need to go home. I can tell you that emotionally, I can't even begin to tell you the darkness that I was feeling at that point. I couldn't breathe. I could not breathe. But there was always a voice at the back of my mind telling me, 24 hours from now, this will be different. 24 hours from now, this will be different. You will land on your feet. You can do this. You are strong enough. This will pass. Doesn't mean that the losses aren't to this day felt keenly, but I'm okay. I landed on my feet. I know I have the skills to get myself back on level ground. And that's what I want people to have.
What's so interesting to me is you started out this discussion around the fact that you had no confidence. And when you tell me that story, it's a acute knowing of the confidence inside you, this innate confidence that obviously was there all along, which you've now found again or built up again. And it just strikes me as odd because that's the way we started. And now this, right? You're in this totally different position. And it's interesting to me how everyone doesn't hear that voice. So some of us have a harder time hearing that voice that says you'll be okay, that you can get through this. You did the work. You did the work.
Do the work. Celebrate every little success. Because when you set small milestones, little steps, and you start achieving success, either feedback or actual get what you want, you start seeing a track record. It's like, oh, I can do that. Ooh, the world is still turning. A few years ago, I decided I wanted to start doing solo hikes for a number of reasons. I tell you, the first time I went out on a solo, I could hear bears everywhere and I could see I always silly. And I got back at the end of the day and I went, what's the difference, right? I've got a safety plan. I've got safety equipment, I can take care of myself. And you know what? If something goes wrong out there and I die on a hike, I'd rather do that than sit at home in a rubber room, which is what we're trying to create for ourselves. And we go, no, I can't do that. I can't get hurt. Can't deal with it. Yes, you can, because you have that depth of wisdom and strength that's never been you've never been tested to realize just how strong and wise you really are. Everyone, I'm not special. I am not special. I want to make that clear. The process is special. It's the process. Throw me into the process, throw you into the process. If you are ready to take action and you want to get from here that you don't like to there that you like, this is a process that will help you tune in to what you really want and to what's really standing in your way.
I also think that while not special, you have had those experiences. I think when I look around and in the group, I can think of, there's a lot of people that have gone through stuff. And I think it's when you go through the stuff is when you figure out that you can withstand these challenges, right? And for people that haven't been through, I think they question it, right? I did an interview with somebody, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and she survived cancer. She has had breast cancer, and she's in recovery now. But she said she had a charmed life until that point, and she never really knew if she'd be able to withstand something major. So I think that's sort of the difference, right? Of once you've gone through some stuff, I do think you have that perspective that when the next wave comes, you can get through it a little easier.
Yes, and so many of us minimize the experiences we've had in life.
Yes.
So many. Well, this happened to me, but oh my gosh, that person, so much worse. Well, I can tell you that how many times did I investigate break and enters where a person might, somebody came into the house and stole blah, 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 and that was it. Other times, somebody come into their house and they're completely traumatized.
Yeah.
How you perceive it.
It's all relative. It's a good point too that ties into the celebrating your wins, because so a lot of these folks in this group, they've been on wellness journeys. And one of the things we teach also in that space is celebrate your wins, because it's not all about it's not all about the scale, but B, it's not all about getting to your final goal, right? There's a lot of things along the way you can celebrate, and it could be something as small or quote unquote insignificant as, I don't know, choosing an apple versus some chips one meal or whatever. But grab those moments and celebrate them. And I think we often, to your point, try to trivialize, or we say, well, so-and-so did more, right? And we're playing on that comparison, which is never a good thing. But I think we tend to naturally go there. So it's another thing we have to watch out for.
What is our whole educational system? Our whole educational system is based on comparing ourselves to everyone else. Compared to the kids, the smart kids, I'm dumb.
Yes.
That's going to be my label for the rest. We even put children who don't achieve the A's in the remedial classes. Yeah. Our whole system is about comparison. And I think this is also relevant about enjoy the journey, hedonic adaptation. What is that? Okay, we are hardwired, and marketers know this. We want something. Oh, I want that new fancy sports car. Oh my gosh, the 2022 edition is so good. All the cool people are driving the 2022 edition. You go and buy it. What happens next year? Oh, the 2023 edition comes out. And look at the bells and whistles. And we start looking at that. Why is that? Because the 2022 edition that was so special is now part of our normal. We've now adapted to it. It no longer gives us the thrill that it used to. So now the marketers know, we need the 2023 edition. And it doesn't matter if it's a dress, a bicycle, the house you live in. 3 years ago, I went to visit some friends who live in a very, very exclusive area on a mountain here where I live. And as I was going to their house, I noticed all these for sale signs. Oh, wow, people are bailing off the mountain. What's going on? So I asked my friend about it, and he started laughing. He said, no, they've just opened a subdivision further up the mountain. Everybody on the lower part of the mountain is now selling because they want to move to the higher part of the mountain.
You're making me think of an interview I did with Janine Darceau, and she has a podcast around unicorn slaying is the slogan, right? So it's all about chasing these external factors that we're never, ever going to reach. And yet we all go after them. We all chase these unicorns. And it's that point that you're making is you go after the latest edition. You go after the higher real estate. You go after, it's a constant chase that you never can fulfill.
No. So one of the most surprising impacts of this transition that I made in my life is my cost of living has gone down. Who would have thought? Shiny squirrel, forget it. Shiny objects, not interested. Don't need it. Don't want it. Is this in alignment? Is this getting me further in living my purpose? And if it's not, I don't want it. It doesn't mean anything anymore. And I'm telling you, my cost of living has plummeted, which is
so freeing
now with what's going on with the economy, right? Everything's going up.
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
So let me ask you this. So, all right, you've been doing this for how many years now?
Well, I got certified when I retired, which is a long time ago. And I'm now putting rubber to the road. So it's a couple of years now that I've been really focusing on this because I realized the huge impact on my life.
So my question was going to be around what still surprises you?
What still surprises me? So I don't know if surprises what surprises me. It surprises me that there are many women out there who are willing to settle. And as I say that, I know I'm Monday morning quarterbacking, because I'm looking back. It's like, come on. Women who are choosing to just accept the status quo. Yeah. But is that surprise? Am I really surprised? I don't know that anything. I'm surprised when I go up like I did on the mountain on Sunday and the wildflowers are out and I just want to cry because it's so beautiful. Like that surprises me. You still affected that. Does things surprise me in life? I don't know.
I guess that comment about the women settling, I think it doesn't surprise me either. When I think about where I am, and for me, some of this work is more recent, I almost want to say you don't know what you don't know until you know it. Like you said, your Monday morning quarterbacking. I mean, I forced you to. The thing is, you're believing your story.
Yes.
You're believing your story you're in until you're not in it anymore. Until that pivotal thing happens and something turns the page or shakes you up or whatever, and the story is not clear anymore.
I think maybe what surprises me is just how much women can accomplish when that veil is taken.
Yes.
I think maybe that surprises me, because I am in a community, just in my community these days, with a lot of women who are entrepreneurs and they're heart-centered. And what they're doing is amazing. It is amazing. And it's creative and it's changing the world in little ways, but every little way counts. I am never, ever going to I don't think, don't say never, but I doubt I will ever resolve the tragedy of famine in Africa. And I'm not belittling that. But if I waste my time carrying that burden, then everything else gets lost. Like all the stuff that I'm doing, what's surprising me is how much joy I'm getting out of various volunteer projects that I'm getting involved with.
I love that because, again, after talking to somebody else recently, one of the things that became prominent in that conversation is that miraculous things, the ripple effect that you can have, they don't have to come from these huge, solving famine or creating peace amongst the world. I mean, those are great inspirational things, but the reality is there's we can do little things in our life that make such a huge difference in this woman's life. Somebody chose to be an organ donor. And I hadn't really thought about it, but the way she pointed it out, it was somebody just checked yes on the form at the DMV. And if you think about that silly little thing, this is, a story around Dr. Brittany Claiborne. And if you just think about that silly little thing, it's nothing. I mean, it really is nothing. It's a 2-second checkbox. That checkbox changed the course of events for her and everyone around her. And she's now doing some fantastic work. So to your point, it's like you can have these ginormous impact just by doing and touching a couple of people. And I try to remind myself of that because when I started this thing, and you can get caught up in the what are your numbers and how many people, and even people sometimes that you go to try to work with, they'll ask you that because they don't want to spend their time on a show that doesn't have big enough numbers, high enough visibility. And I know those aren't my people. Like you and I talked and we had an authentic connection. And that's how I've been with everybody that I talk to. My thought is if I reach one person, just one person, if this conversation we're having reaches one person and helps them do one thing to move closer to where they want to be, in my opinion, we succeeded and it was worth our couple hours that, of conversation. So I think it's important. It's an important message for people to hear, like that just small things that they do in their everyday life can have a big impact.
Absolutely. After 9/11, and I don't know where you were at 9/11. I know where I was in 9/11. And it was just this enormity of the disaster and the tragedy. And I remember you think, what can I do? I was ready to go to New York and do all this. And I remember walking into a big box store and there was one of my colleagues in uniform by himself, raising money for first responders in New York. He raised crazy amounts of money, crazy amounts. Flew down to New York, delivered the money, was received so warmly and graciously by the people in New York that he dealt with. And there was about 3 or 4 of us here looked at him and went, I can do that.
Yeah.
So we signed on to his team and, helped him. But until then, all I could think of was, these buildings have come down. There's disasters. People are dead. People are missing. What could I possibly do? And there he was with his box collecting money.
There's your sign, as they say. I think it's an important message because we immediately go to and get caught up in the how big is it? How big does it have to be? And it doesn't have to be that big. So it's a good message.
It has to count.
Yeah.
It has to count.
It has to count. Big impact, right? Yeah. So listen, before we wrap up, before this goes too long, I think we both could talk for 10 hours, but before this goes too long, I just wanted to give you an opportunity. Is there anything you want to share that we haven't touched on?
It's never, ever too late, because one day moving towards your dream is better than a lifetime of just settling and accepting. Just even if you, for one day, I'm on that new track. I think that's worth it. It is never, ever too late.
I love that message. It's never, ever too late.
No, it's not.
And so we're going to put your links to your website, and you're also sharing a PDF for the group. Anybody that wants to access it, we'll put that link out in the show notes. And thank you so much for your time. This has been a fantastic conversation. I hope we can keep in touch.
I absolutely hope so as well. I'm so glad we crossed paths, and thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share my message.
I love your work. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Message in the Middle with Marianne. If you enjoyed the podcast, please take a minute to share it and write a review, as it helps bring new listeners to our audience. If you'd like to keep the conversation going between episodes, please join us at Facebook group Message in the Middle with Marianne.